So all we're waiting on is wires.
No, wires are good.
Kick them. Kick them wires.
Doesn't mean I'm cued.
It's 45 minutes late, Jeff. Or like 50 minutes. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on here.
Was this guy or what?
Oh, there's that power button. It was all there except for the power button.
Ask him what his degree is in.
Radio and television communications. Hello and welcome to Everyone Racers, a show designed for the world of low-dollar racing and oddball car culture. It doesn't matter what kind of Lemma Champ or Lucky Track Dog League you run, SEC or NASA, we won't discriminate as long as you drive it hard and built it yourself. Join us each week for tech discussion, tips, tricks, news and notes in the world of amateur endurance racing, and whether it's on the spot, hella sweet, or we're lucky enough and Chrissy gives us just the tip, we're sure you will giggle a little and learn even less. Everyone report to the paddock.
We are not Chris.
Chrissy.
This is Jeff.
And I'm Mental.
And we are Everyone Racers. Thanks for coming back and listening to a pile-up episode of our podcast. It is episode 193 on January 9th of 2015, along the notorious I-94 in Michigan. 193 vehicles were involved in a crash during a hazardous wintry condition. We call that snowing around here. Miraculously,
no. Michigan hazard winters are not quite snow.
Look, when you design your state to look like a winter mitten, you know you're getting some snow. Miraculously, only one person was killed, but many were injured. It was national news because a semi-truck full of fireworks began exploding, and a second truck carrying 44,000 pounds, that's 44,000 pounds of acid, caused a shelter-in-place order for the surrounding 12 miles. Chrissy, would that become a dangerous condition in your book, in your business?
Yes, and I'm pretty sure I remember this because I'm trying to think of, I'm pretty sure we usually keep track.
It's 2015. Like it was only like 6 years ago, so you were
No,
in
was
the
still,
safety.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. All right, well, if you're not driving, especially in a snowy, bad weather, winter snow out, grab the brand new revised E1R bingo card and play along. Speaking of playing along, Mental, what you working on?
So you'll notice I am yet again clean shaven for what I believe is the third time for the last time. So as of today, it is my final day on active duty. Again, never say never, but I did have to shave, put on a uniform one more time. Tomorrow morning, I go get my retired ID card, but I've already started my new job. Just got back in from Thunderhill. I had great plans for Memorial Day weekend. And after being in a gajillion degree temperatures in Thunderhill, we'll talk about that in a minute. Instead, I spent all day Monday sitting on the couch, literally just drinking water, trying to rehydrate. It was so hot.
Who the hell puts a racetrack in the middle of the desert? I don't know.
Well, no, and Willows is into the desert. Willows is like, it gets into the hill country, but it's also been like over 100 degrees here every day for a week. But it's not the worst part. But that's what I've been working on. Jeff?
Sure. Who do you want to go to? So the Z work has begun working in earnest. 2 weekends ago, it was like 95, 97 degrees here. And I was like in Jersey and I was like, man, I'm going to work next weekend. It's supposed to cool down a little, and cool down a little. It did. It was 50 degrees and raining and wind here in New Jersey. And it was absolutely disgusting. And as you all know, people who have listened to the podcast more than once, I will say it once again, I've wrenched in the driveway. So
your tent was pretty.
Yes, I did go out and buy a new tent, one of those like erect yourself Harbor Freight deals, just to try and keep the rain off me. It worked pretty well for one day. The second day it rained so hard I like hung tarps off the side and built walls. It was that disgusting. But I did get a lot of work done. The brake booster controller, power brake booster has been swapped. I plumbed the new power steering. I took the pump and the alternator off to make sure everything was right. I put in the power steering reducer because once again, when you put an LS into a 300Z, Chevy pump, Nissan rack, they do not want to play along. But I did disassemble a whole bunch of the pump to make sure it was all still correct. And it was all still correct. So I'm pretty excited by that. I did several little jobs on the Z, like some wiring and things, nothing important. But definitely changing the booster was a pretty big job. I had to spend quite a bit of time in the lotus position, which...
It's the worst.
Yes. For those of you who don't know what the lotus position is, it is when your head must go where the pedals are. It's a lot harder in a caged race car.
And the cage isn't even the worst part. It's always the seat right there at that one uncomfortable part of your back. And then you spend the whole day the next day, like as you go to take a deep breath, it always pinches just a little. So it's,
I had one of those days when I got out and I couldn't walk. We've all had one of those really actually hurt yourself at a work weekend kind of day because of the lotus position.
I ended up putting my hips like across like where the emergency brake handle is, so it wasn't so bad, and kind of put my foot over the top of the cage, so it wasn't so bad. But it's like it's a race car, so it's got a full seat in it. So it's like, well, in 20 minutes I could pull the seat. Or I could just stay here for 10 more minutes in pain. And then 10 minutes later, you're like, damn it, I should have pulled out the seat. Like, but I only got 10 more minutes. So I'm just going to finish it here. And it was terrible.
3 hours later.
3 hours. Yeah. No, it wasn't that bad. It actually wasn't that bad. The pedal cluster that we put in there is pretty accessible, and I'm pretty used to where everything is. I also got the replacement for the windshield on the Mazda 3. So we are an inspection sticker away from selling my daily driver.
Yay, that's great.
Very exciting. And I totally forgot a story last week, so I'm going to say something now, but it actually happened before we recorded last week. Triple El Jefe, as you know, people call me all the time. They're like, hey, I'm in New Jersey and I'm broken down. Come get me. So on Thursday night, I get a frantic call from Bill Fisher and company of the Garage Heroes podcast. And he says, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, nothing. He's like, so I'm down at NJMP and my rental RV didn't show up. Any chance your parents aren't camping at the moment and will lend me your RV? So I had a brief, uncomfortable conversation with my father and delivered an RV to NJMP. And I got there, and Chrissy, are you ready for this? Hold on to your socks. Bill Fisher has finished the prep of his E46 BMW.
Yes.
He did the manual swap.
I thought I heard that it wasn't like that serious.
I don't know. We have some BMW experts in the room. BMW experts.
We do.
How hard is it to manual swap an SMG E46? Like 1 to 10.
It is approximately 2 days work and some coding in a retail environment, and runs about $5,500 to $6,000 depending on what gearbox is used.
What's the difficulty level? Like, could a dyslexic squirrel pull it off? Or
I didn't know Alan was there. Was it Alan or just Bill?
It was not.
There's a degree of finesse required for such tasks on anything BMW related, as I'm sure somebody is watching this probably.
There are certain types of squirrels that could achieve it.
all right. Well,
Are these only in your neck of the woods?
Yeah.
Special New Jersey flavor. By the way, I am from Pennsylvania. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's true.
well, these dyslexic squirrels are from Pennsylvania also. So anyway, they did have a race shop who did some of the prep for the suspension, and he called the guy over from the race shop, and I don't remember who he was, or else I gave him a shout out. And Bill was like, it's clunking in the rear. It's clunking in the rear. And the guy gets under and he checks all the suspension pieces, and he looks and he looks and he looks and he looks. He's like, there's nothing wrong with that suspension, man. And Jim reaches in, because Jim, my brother, was there, and he says, hey, Bill. And he pokes at the trunk, and he's like, maybe it's this shit that's loose in here. And I look in, and the previous owner had a system, and there was like, I don't know, 30 pounds worth of stereo equipment that was really shoddily installed in the back. So I did what I love to do when Bill's around, is I give him orders like he's like a sultan. I go like, Bill, get me a 10 millimeter. And he like runs to his trailer and he gets a 10 millimeter. So I actually got to do some wrenching while I was there. I pulled out, like I said, 20 pounds, 25 pounds of stereo equipment.
I love how you think for a second that when you go to help the Fishers, who are wonderful people, that there's a possibility you won't be wrenching.
There really was nothing to wrench on. He could have totally pulled this apart, but if I'm there, I'm going to wrench. So
Well, that's because you like to,
I
not
do.
because they needed it.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
He was gonna put the screw back in. Oh, sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
No, Tyler. That's Tyler.
Oh, Tyler,
Josh
sorry.
is the other one.
Try doing it 24/7, 365. It loses its luster. That's for sure.
It's true. See, the problem is he was going to put the screw back in and tighten the equipment, and I said that is unacceptable. This is a track car. It's got to get pulled. So, sorry, that was a long story, Chrissy. What you working on?
That's okay. I'll go fast. We've been doing a ton of boat work. We are working hard to get it done. I call it renditions, but wet sanding, compound, and wax inside and out. So each layer, everything needs to happen all around the inside and the outside. So that's what we've had to do this weekend. I finished the inside, and then Chris worked on reinstalling our floor. It's like a nice teak with a backing. It's just like a boat floor. And we put that in last night, so we had to pull the boat into the garage to be able to work on it in the dark. That's always fun. And he was reinstalling the rub rail. Yes.
I'll say, because Josh was asking earlier, and for listeners who might just be their first time, this is the what year Boston Whaler?
83
Boston Whaler that Chris has basically had since he was 14. It's been around forever. It's spent its life in salt. The trailer actually physically reduced to complete dust. They didn't even have to junk it. It just became dust, and the boat was on the ground. They had to buy a new trailer. But not exaggerating, Chris and Chrissy arrived to their wedding in this boat where they walked up the pier. So this
you
boat
might be the only person that thinks
has
it's
a
so
history.
cool, but whatever. Yes, it does.
It was
have a
cool.
history.
I was there. I saw it.
Gorgeous.
It was cool. That was great. It helped that it was a great day and really nice people. But anyway, so he's working on it now. We need to get the center console together so we can put the power to the motor, so we can actually put it up so we could drive, because we did not. It did not go up, and trying to get it in the driveway definitely high centered. So I had to really try to pick it up and move it. I was been scrambling to pack lines, other boat stuff, food, music, and miscellany, all of the stuff that needs to happen. And I took the kit to the vet this afternoon as well. That's what I've been up to. Okay. Moving on. Hopefully you've noticed a couple of new voices. Our guest for the show is Josh Jenny, racer, instructor, and new homeowner, but BMW enthusiast, carbon fiber creator extraordinaire. And with him, Tyler Pappas, future guest on the and BMW expert on the YouTube. You can test to his shop. Make sure you're looking because it's pretty awesome. What you working on, guys?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having us. Josh here. We'll get to Tyler in just a second. But as the current one of the chief instructors and safety managers for Extreme, and also being in charge of my own operation, which is Artisan Research, where I design and manufacture carbon fiber stuff. I've got a little thing going on called Way Too Much. So right now we're actually moving to a new headquarters. So for the past 5 years, I had about 2,000 square feet where there was more or less a clean room to do composite work, sheet metal, welding, painting, mechanical stuff. I'm going to stuff that into a 3-car garage now, and hopefully my basement, before hopefully building a second building, trying to get the garages refinished, redesigning the driveway all of a sudden. Overload, which is constant. I'm sure you guys know it went to a new level recently with homeownership, and the anxiety is just flowing in from all sides, and we're very glad to be here. But normally, if I could work on things that were fun, usually I'm designing some kind of, the bigger project now is designing a new carbon aerodynamic component, which would be a composite air dam and splitter to provide massive front downforce for something like an E46 M3.
It's a sexy piece of kit there you're making too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's what's good about composites is that you can take things that you've learned from woodworking and metalworking and mechanical stuff and welding and sheet metal and body work, and you can put all of them together, and you can now make a shape that you could not make any other way. And once you become versatile enough, the result is that you can make any shape that you can think of. So with that, the project that I'm working on primarily, again, is an E46 M3 air dam. So, you take an existing front bumper, you graft in an entirely new shape that interacts with a flat surface, a splitter, to create that aerodynamic effect, and then essentially adapts to an E46 M3. And everything that happens between those two planes is up to you on how that looks and how it's going to interact with the air. And then once you have that shape, now you can mold it. Once you make a mold, now you can make a part. And only after that first part, if you're lucky, is done, will you find out if any of it is any good. And you could spend.
Are you telling me you're not computer modeling with like wind tunnels and?
Well, not even so much in terms of its the efficacy of it aerodynamically, which in due time will be proven down at the A2 wind tunnel in North Carolina, which is actually where Tyler's car was tuned for it to run up the Pikes Peak hill climb. And actually, the gains he had there were almost enough to get him up that mountain quicker than I did in my Nissan Sentra rental car earlier. But more so with composites, if you picture your ways you can screw up in woodworking, metalworking, welding, there is literally 1,000 different ways that you can screw up in the world of composites. And it could happen at any of the 1,000 steps along the way too. So just achieving a part is great, but then it could have changed shape. You have to be in the right plane in terms of, did you make something that fits over a bumper, or is it trying to exist on the same plane as the bumper and now it doesn't fit at all? There's a million different things. So that would be normally what I was doing if I'm not in the headquarters. And then I'm also dutifully putting off some maintenance on my street car. I reminisce of a time at Watkins Glen when a guy came in, he reported the brakes were making a little bit of noise and there was an hour to go and we were running, pushing for the podium. And I went out and did that last hour. When we came back, I thought I was hearing the backer on the brake pad rubbing the rotor. We had actually completely consumed the backer. We were now halfway through the piston. And we ended up on the podium. And what does that tell you? That when I hear a little bit of noise from my street car, it's almost time to change the brakes. So we're going to listen to that.
Or drive faster. Well, it's yeah.
It's turn the radio up.
Treat it like a roller coaster. You don't accelerate too much. You don't have to brake too much. But and then I also have a 2002 that I'm restoring. My past would involve at one point restoring vintage European race cars. So I took everything I learned from there and I'm applying it to my own car, which is nice. And I'm kind of getting back into chipping away at that to, kind of bring it home to its new home. And brand new, and this makes me think of Chrissy's project. Chrissy, I would love to hear more about this boat, because a boat like what you're doing sounds like the exact kind of awful project that I would like to do. And absolutely.
With all your extra time that you have, that sounds great.
Exactly.
It's like all-consuming, and that's all we do.
I heard you speaking about it in a prior episode, and it just confirmed. So, at the appropriate time, I would just like to hear a little bit of like why you love it to get my hopes up, and then just crush it with the reality as to why.
There's no love sitting on it. Hate working on it.
They can do that with one picture if she has it on her phone of the two of them last time they were sanding it, or so.
Oh, just covered in the dust.
Yeah, I've seen him like that many times walking up to his shop in Pennsylvania.
So,
a bag of flour, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Have you seen yourself yet today?"
Yeah. And by the way, you're not coming in my shop at all. Not like that. Get a hose. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's great about what I do and why I enjoy it is that you are creating something new. And as I said, if you put enough work into it, you can create any shape, anything that you want. So.
And we're going to beat the shit out of that later as a topic.
He's trying to interrupt you.
No, down to the questions. That's important on there. And before we transition over to news and notes, we all empathize with the homeowner thing, because I have spent the last few months putting a new roof on my house. Chrissy, to both her left and her right, have long-term projects that they just recently completed. A brand new kitchen that took them a couple of years, and also a new fireplace. And directly over Jeff's head, entirely new flooring after chasing the squirrels out of your attic and then getting rid of the electrified rear door.
Pretty much. Home ownership. It's the greatest thing ever. If we didn't have all these race cars to build, we might be able to fix our houses.
Well, on that note, the last thing that I am working on as of this exact moment, because as Chrissy pointed out, I do have a little thing called too much free time. I got in on another race car. My buddy Tyler here, another friend, Eric Magnuson, who owns Mainline Motorsports down in Exton, also BMW, Porsche racing specialist kind of guy. The three of us with our like minds and versatile skill sets and cumulative zero spare time are going to build a race car together. So we just looked at it. I did for the first time. It's an E90. It's an X-Fall line car, pretty much a chassis in white that was caged and never used. So,
tell the whole story of how you got there to buying a caged car after halfway down the path of.
So this step one, I think, was buy a car without a roll cage with the intentions of putting a roll cage in.
Step two was work on it for approximately 8 hours in total before realizing that we had absolutely no freaking time.
And then we found the identical car, same year, same color, 4 doors, and it already had a roll cage built by a reputable manufacturer and another set of coilovers. We're losing money if we don't buy this car. So now we have a full spare car, which means in that first race, we can afford
we can
to
just
go
write it
off.
off. We have no problem.
Yeah, you know, what's a fender on the first race? Did you finish?
We got a whole other side of the car. We can
all to win.
Both sides.
And there are sponsorship opportunities gleaming to be part of the
it's called the fact that it's my job. Who do you think's going to put this car together when it's all said and done?
Yes.
To say, if there are any sponsors out there thinking about sponsoring anything, why do a wrecked car? How about a successful podcast? That's what I'm saying.
I tell you what, you guys, if we get through this episode, I'll happily put a spot right on the bottom of the transmission tunnel for you.
There you go. All right. Let's move on to news and notes time.
Driving simulators. We love them, as shown by our Lemons I Suck at Racing League commentary, our own Monday night E1R League. But it would appear that the OG of driving simulators, Gran Turismo, is having some challenges with their latest release. So Gran Turismo 7 was originally designed for the newest console, the PS5. The new game might, however, be released on the existing console, the PS4, because as Adam Ismail on Jalopnik puts it, everything is impossible to buy in 2021 from cars to gaming consoles. Now, we've got a link to this story on our show notes because obviously Sony wants to have some premium games on the new PS5, but at the same time, if nobody's buying the PS5, nobody's going to buy their new game. So they've got to make it available on the old one.
Yep.
I like that the link, I don't care the drive, blah, blah, blah. Mercedes still can't get that broken wheel.
Update that link.
One car.
We'll fix it
I have
before
failed
we
to
get
do
there.
that.
Oh, I was like, that is a terrible link. Okay, funny. Never mind. Because they probably still can't anyway. Actually, I hope they are because they're in Baku.
They got it off with a Dremel. It's on their Instagram.
Oh, gotta go there.
A very precision Dremel going at it for hours.
I would not want to do that job. Yeah. All right. Some months ago, we reported that unfortunately, abbreviated Volkswagen Auto Group was trying to sell off its Bentley and Lamborghini brands. They reported that they weren't because they changed their mind. Now, Eric Schilling at Jalopnik tells us that a Zurich and London group of investors have been made a 7.5 billion euro offer for the supercar company. This is part of an effort to create what they describe as technology and lifestyle investment platform, whatever that means. The working title of a new brand is called Outlook 2030. Okay. What's interesting is that part of the investors include Peisch Auto.
Peisch, yes.
Okay, good.
Peisch.
Anton Peisch, son of former Volkswagen Group Dieselgate VW chairman, Fernand Peisch.
Yes, Peisch related to Dr. Porsche, but not same. I can't believe we did 3 Jalopnik stories in a row. It's like Mental put all the stories in, and I didn't put any in. YouTuber and writer, and most importantly, occasional Lemons judge Jason Torchensky turns 50 today, the day we're recording. Probably not the day you're listening. But fellow Jalopnik writer Dave Tracy comprised a list of some of his best works. And I just think these are fantastic. The Chang Li car stuff is great, but some of these disturbing article titles just have to be read out loud. Here's some articles. How to Pee in Your Car and Keep Your Pants Dry by Jason Torchensky. I took a dump the same way the Apollo astronauts did, and dear God, it was awful by Jason Torchensky. Can you use a canned ham as a bumper guard? Jason Torchensky. By the way, I checked that article out. I used Google the phrase, and I came up with this quote: Can-Am does not make a suitable bumper guard protection system, but other higher density and finer grained canned meats like Treat do. That's Treet do. In fact, they make for highly serviceable, if disgusting, bumper protectors. In case you don't know, Treat is like the discount version of Spam, which, as we all know, is the favorite breakfast meat of the Three Pedal Mafia. So woo go Spam. I'm going to make a bumper protector out of it next time. Link in the show notes if you want to check out all of these beauties. Yeah. Do like mental, waste half your workday reading these stories.
Now, I know no one was, but if you were going to stop by Whiskey Pete's Casino in Primm, Nevada and see that Bonnie and Clyde death car along with Dutch Schultz armored car that Al Capone bought, you missed your chance. Yesterday, it left. They are both being moved to the Ronald Reagan Library for a new 11,000 square foot exhibition, which covers the history of the storied Federal Bureau of Investigation and a display called FBI From Al Capone to Al Qaeda, which will run from July 2nd until January of 2022. No word on if or when the horribly morbid death car will return to the casino.
Is it really that horribly morbid?
Yeah,
death cars.
Of course I went and saw it. And it is stenciled on the back, the Bonnie and Clyde death car. And if you saw the end of the recent movie with Woody Harrelson and the Highwayman and Kevin Costner, they lit that up. The guy knew those two were not going to be taken alive, and they put 1,000 rounds into that car.
Yeah. Upcoming races. We got a very busy weekend, so I'm just going to dive right in. The Lemons is at High Plains Raceway for the first of their 2 scheduled events this year. 60 cars, only 8 of them BMWs.
Boring.
9 Miatas, 4 Hondas. One of them is a CRV. Yes. A single Porsche and a Vega will battle the Pinto for the 70s Econo-Crap supremacy. My money's on the Vega. I don't know about you.
It's Tommy Salami's Pinto, so I might take you up on that bet.
Oh, Tommy Salami's he runs that thing hard.
He does. Well, right. Which is why it's claim to fame. All right.
Yes.
AER is going to be running at Summit Point, 29 cars, 16 of which are BMWs.
Boring. That's
boring.
More than half. More than half
Yes.
the field will be boring ass BMWs.
Come on.
It's the easy button. In endurance racing.
Yeah. So,
All right. 3 Miatas, 1 Honda, 4 Porsches, and a Cadillac not being run by Daring Greatly Racing.
Oh.
Hopefully, that's setting a new trend.
Chrissy, that's you. You're up.
Sorry, I just asked him what kind of Cadillac it was.
Oh, did you?
I'm sorry. I missed that. It is another CTS.
Oh, okay. I thought
It might even be the same CTS,
like
right?
a cooler one. That's what I was looking for.
Perhaps.
Okay, where are all those Miatas, boring BMWs? Where are all the Porsches? Well, WRL is running 14 hours at Daytona. There are 90 cars going.
Holy
27
cow.
of them are more boring BMWs, 9 Miatas, 5 Hondas, 20 Porsches, and a trio of Aston Martins.
Ooh.
And finally, Lucky Dog is at Pacific Raceways in Kent, Washington for an 8+6 2-day enduro. 58 cars going. That's awesome for them. 20 BMWs. That's
So
Boring.
6 Miatas, 4 Hondas, 4 Porsches, and a 9.
1994.
Get a little Southern on that one. Go ahead. Talk.
You're the
Say
only
it
one
right.
who can do that. We were all born above the
Right?
Manson.
And this is
All right.
going to Pacific.
There is a 1984 Monte Carlo. Dale be praised.
I had to, I can't even read it. Thanks for writing it out, though. I appreciate it. We'll see how they do.
Oh boy, there was races last weekend because it is race season. Thank God the Rona is going away. We could be in person racing. Oh my God, it's so exciting. Lemons, that's mental. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go for it. It's all
Okay.
you, Jeff.
Lemons Yokohama Days at Thunder Hill was this weekend. 114 cars battled the heat, rapidly diminishing grip, and the scorn of the judges on the 5-mile circuit. Thunder Hill is 5 miles.
There are so many. There's
Holy
like a dozen
cow.
configurations. They can actually run 2 separate races on 2 separate tracks. But for this race, we got the big 5-mile configuration.
It's
Dang.
crazy. I'd open Race Monitor. I know we're not done with this yet. I'd open Race Monitor and I'd be like, look, we're there. You know, our couple teams we know are there, and they're in 11th. That's awesome. And then I would look, and the top 25 cars are on the same lap. Because there's so many, because it's so long that everybody's in the same lap. All right. After literally battling all weekend until the checker flag flew, the E36 of UMAD Bro edged Hella Shitty for their first overall and Class A win by less than a minute.
Oh, that's nice. You mad bro, good for you, because Hella Shitty's won a couple of times. So
Yes, and you Mad Bro was they've been the bridesmaids a lot, and it's usually just 2 guys running that car, and with hot pit fueling, it was a definite handicap.
wow. Similarly, good friend Corey Dickman, along with the Randwin Parked Sorry for Party Racing, you broke the the gang ruined the national championship, whatever. They held off an E3318 of School of Race Car in the Omega. Yes, the 6-liter LS swapped Omega.
5.3.
Oh, is it a 5.3? I thought it was a 6-liter.
5.3.
Yeah, when a LS Malaise Mobile and an E30 are all in Class B, you have to scratch your head and go, what has happened to my dear lemons?
Until the last 30 minutes of the race, they were also on the same lap, often trading the lead. It was a lot of it came down to pit stop strategies, and then the last bit of it, they put Pantless Matt in the Omega, and it was just one of those release the Kraken.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there's guys out there in Ford Tempos or Ford Focuses going, no, we're Class B. What is that crap?
But I mean, how many times has the Omega blown up?
That's
or
true.
Lost its brakes, or cooked its transmission, or what you did actually eat through its tires. They were basically running slicks by the end of the weekend. Now, and finally, in your racing classes, not too sabby, in the first race that they actually finished in over 6 attempts, brought home the win in God's chosen class, Class C.
Is that Sabi or Sabby? Because it's SAAB, like Saab.
Yeah, because it's a Saab 9.3.
Oh, a Saab.
Are we done here? Heroic Fix was the number 232 Thunderbird of Thunderbird Racing, who actually got head gaskets for their V6 Thunderbird from another Thunderbird team, but it required a round trip to Folsom. And I Got Screwed was the multi-generation team of Rogue Squadron, and their mothballed number 50 Sentra SE-R after a 4-hour trip found their new engine was the wrong year at about 3 a.m.
Oh. I know nothing about Nissans. I can only assume that wouldn't go in. Judges choice, I assume, was the BMW team officially named, quote, this is the team name, there is a group of young people with dreams of wonder, ...
Oh, it keeps going. It keeps
going. All right.
It was like a paragraph. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's already too long, but that's awesome. A great team name. So they were just known by their sponsor, which was Dick Ass, which is a real Chinese brake manufacturer with a terrible translation department and not enough 12-year-olds in the boardroom approving their marketing materials.
They showed up with flags. They had actually the brakes from a display that this company had brought to one of the trade shows. Yeah, it's fantastic.
That's hilarious.
Now, organizer's choice was the number 77 Firebird from PCR Firebird Extra Crispy. One of the team principals, it was his grandmother's car. She bought it new. They pulled it out of the dirt a month and a half ago.
Wait a minute. A grandmother owned a Firebird? We're believing this crap?
Yes. I saw the pictures. Beautiful brown 77 Firebird. And then, of course, the one kid on the team that's in his 20s, they had to explain to him who Jim Rockford was, what a Rockford was, who James Garner was, what a television is, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Finally, your true winner, the IOE, was the gorgeous Alfa Romeo sedan from Scuderia Limone, which actually this year had been stolen while inside its trailer by a bunch of thieves that wanted the tow vehicle that was attached to the trailer. The whole recovery.
Yeah,
they dumped it.
I remember
like the bomb squad had to go in there because they thought it was like a it was out in the middle of a park and they thought it was a terrorist event. So they got all that stuff back. Beautiful car, 52 years old, still managed to finish the entire race.
That's fantastic. We had a show last week and we had some listener feedback. Favorite co-conspirator Randy B, that's the Bishmeister, commented on our YouTube, quote, to add to the noob discussion, we were talking about running autocrosses and things, so he was chiming in about that. He runs autocross events at Pit Race, and anytime they see people online saying, quote, I don't have the right car, or I'm waiting to install whatever pointless mod, they just send them pictures of his Buick Roadmaster wagon three-wheeling on the course and say, get your ass out on the course. Of course. Finding new blood is hard right now in autocross, though most of the current 16 to 21-year-olds just don't seem to be interested in cars, let alone performance cars or performance car events. They're branching out and trying to push more on social media, but so far their only real success is trying to explain TikTok to the guys who are old enough to think Dragon Ball is something you need to be shot for. Or
Not
you need
shot,
a
you need a shot
You needed
for.
a shot for, yes. Dragon Ball. Is that like a STD joke? Is that what he's going
Yes.
for?
Yes.
Bishmeister?
Yeah. Tyler, you own a performance shop. Clearly, you have some knowledge of performance. What are you seeing a change in demographics about young people, or you still got a lot of folks coming in?
How many young people can afford a BMW at a pro shop?
I mean, you'd be really surprised. I think our demographic, we're probably like 75-25 here, 75% being like service and repair and 25% being like specialty and modification work and stuff like that. You'd be surprised how much turnover we have, like the in and out stuff. But the people that do come in and get involved in projects and spend money, they're definitely like, I would say at a minimum 35, I mean, like they definitely have a good job and be doing something. And they're usually something technical as well. Like there are a lot of IT guys that own BMWs, a lot of just business people, like, it's weird. It's a very strange niche, but there is certainly a client type that we see a lot of, and no, not a lot of them are young kids.
All right. So Randy also added Jeff rather, that as a Fiesta ST owner, and he loves his fist, that he drove the Veloster in and you need to wait for it.
I just pictured in my mind Randy in a Fiesta ST.
Yeah. You've seen him. He brought it to pit.
He did? I don't remember. All I remember is that crazy.
No. What? Yeah.
I'm just saying that's a luxury mammal in a tiny car.
And he loves it. Yeah, it's a good car. Now, also the good Wakeman added that the strangest thing he's seen in an autocross was a full-size electric bus from the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. He's also seen many Malaise-era land yachts and at least one full-size dually pickup truck, along with tons of Econo boxes. So you just heard Josh tell a story about putting a car on the podium in an endurance race with no brakes, really just the caliper pushing the piston into his rotor. So whatever pointless mod you're waiting on, don't. Put your car on the track. Go autocrossing. Have some fun.
Wow, that was forceful. Anyway,
That
Tyler,
said, autocrossing is where I got started.
We all got started there. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great intro sport. First one's free, man.
Right?
YouTube can't see you, or YouTube can see you.
YouTube can. It's the podcast people
podcast
that can't.
cannot see you. Okay. Tyler Stank mentioned his new MX-3 is going to grid life soon as it has reliable brakes, which is actually a good excuse. We did talk about that, but talked about our disassembly tips. Oh man, that bolt labeling thing hits close to home. I just found 2 bolts with the little conical section close to the head on my workbench. I know they came from the MX-3, but I don't know where. Something tells me that the conical bit is there for a reason, but the odds of going back to where they're supposed to be, where they belong, is not great.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I have had a lot of suspension apart lately. If that bolt end has a round end, it's designed to be pushed into something you might need to hammer it in. So you probably came out of your suspension somewhere near the springs. Go find it, Tyler.
Right.
Probably important.
I suck at racing. Of course we do.
Yeah. But this is the Oh, look at that guy.
Oh,
Look
that's
at that
a
good
dog
boy.
and a half. Holy cow.
There we go.
If you're not watching on YouTube, hang up, stop driving, and go check out the goodest boy.
He knows he's on
On-
camera.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
We went iRacing.
Interruption. Sorry, not sorry, he says.
Second racing was on Friday night this week, which messed with everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Didn't even realize it was happening.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Not-
Sorry. Yeah.
Sunday, though.
This Sunday is going to be No Pedal, No Wheel, which is always hilarious, alongside Trash Frets and finally Formula 8. I'm actually going to be there. So even if you're not going to race, tune into the broadcast, interact with Bearded Sim Racer and me as we wander down the rabbit hole of obscure car movies and celebrity mustaches rankings or whatever else crosses our minds. So it's always a good time.
Every Monday night we get together and we have an E1R race, and this Monday night was no different, even though it was a holiday. So we did double duty at the Charlotte Roval. The first race was trophy trucks and skippies and a couple of Miatas, which is always fun. After realizing that Mental was going straight at the bus stop and clearing everyone's penalties with his hotkey, no one used them. So now everybody skipped the bus stop. According to the notes, Tyler won. Maybe it was Santiago. I'm not sure. I'm sure it was lots of fun. Tom and Uncle Dave weren't there, so there was none of that banter. Aaron was there, but it just wasn't the same. I wasn't even there. I was binge watching The Mayor of Easttown with my wife, so I missed it. But there it is. I assume it was a good time. If you want to join us every Monday night, 9:00. We have an E1R iRace. It's under hosted races. Look for E1R. It does have a password. Contact us about the password, but I'm just going to tell you, it's our favorite brake pad. So you probably already know.
Yep. The second race, the weekend took a lot of us. So only 9 folks hung around. Delara's Radicals and one moron driving one of the GT3 cars. I was so far behind. I have no idea who won. Still had a great time.
Awesome.
Oh, nobody has a plug?
Nope.
You know who's never 3 laps behind?
Hi, Mom.
Chrissy's mom. Hi, Chrissy's mom. And Chrissy's
Josh,
dad and Chrissy's
you have had
sister.
Chrissy's mom's cookies, by the way, when we were all at New Jersey a couple of years ago. You and
I would
Pete showed
like
up a
to
little late.
formally Thank Chrissy and subsequently her mother on behalf of the entire Lemons community for keeping us alive between 10 p.m. and I don't know, I guess the driver's meeting the next morning, because it's like, a good look at the other side of the coin when you're not wasting all your money racing. You're just like waiting in line for Chrissy to feed you because you and none of your friends came prepared to, sustain life for more than 12 hours. So
I was going to say,
This is amazing.
sustaining life on those cookies. We like sugar rush.
There's so many different kinds.
That's true.
Although the oatmeal bar things, that probably's got some protein in it. That probably could sustain you a little bit.
There's sometimes there's a jam
peanut butter
one,
and jelly
there's like a
ones,
lemon,
the
which is
ones,
which is fruit. Yeah.
Main topic time.
All right.
Wait a minute.
I have actually had the genuine pleasure of knowing one of our guests for years.
Actually, we all have. Just
That's
saying.
true. Yes. Even longer before I actually met him in Meat Space, we were competing against each other. We just never put it all together. We're both instructors for Extreme, but now he is one of what they call the 4Js, the head of their safety program. He's also been refining the instructor recruitment and training program, which has yielded huge benefits, both in retention and safety. And he'll give his whole current status. But this is the idea behind this is the start of several series. So that's why we want to get Tyler back too, where we've met folks who are using their brains as opposed to just spending cubic dollars to make their cars faster. So Josh, I'm just going to shamelessly say, give us the elevator pitch for what you and Artisan Research do.
So with Artisan Research, that was something that established probably about 10 years ago now. I had spent somewhere in 5 to 7 years into working at a vintage European race car shop where we worked on Bugattis and Ferraris and Maseratis, and that's where I gained the access to Bridgeports and lathes and the paint booth and sheet metal, and I just became the master of roughly 0 trades, but I was exposed to 17 of them. And as soon as I walked in there, I mean, I was near Ferraris that were red back when they only used red on Ferraris that raced. So to have the itch to go racing, be working on that all day, and then have the facilities to work at this place, Layden Restorations, by the way, who's still in business 50 years later, working on the nicest stuff ever. I got to the point where it was an interesting handicap to be working on things of the past, you know, race cars from the 30s, when I was trying to really advance, you know, into more modern and sophisticated materials. So I one day, well, along the journey somewhere, I started rally car racing, and the guy who I raced with, Luke Sorensen, he was into Saab 99s, of which you can buy 0 performance parts for. So he had to make everything, and he made his own composite hood, and I laid up a hood with him the one day, and I just saw how, you know, you could make a radius surface, you could have a flat surface, you could have a compound surface, and it was all the same surface. Well, I'll be damned. It's time to get to work. So I started with the simplest part that I could make, which was a block off panel that you would put in your Momo steering wheel after you use a quick release device. Once you have that quick release device, the hardware is now interfering with the stock horn buttons, so you're stuck looking at the hardware. And I was doing all of this nice work on an E36 M3 race car that I was building, and I had a lot of material and time, so I just machined a little mold that was a pocket, and I laid up carbon fiber and just made this little piece that filled that steering wheel. And I think it probably took about, you know, a handful of them to make one worthwhile. But as it turns out, I was not the only one with a Momo steering wheel. And one of my friends wanted one, and another one wanted another one. And now I think I've sold about 500 of those things in just about every state and 6 or 7 different countries. So in the world of, like, you want to sell ketchup packets, this was the part. You know, everybody has a steering wheel, and everybody, whether it's Momo, OMP, Driven, whomever it is, they all use that, I believe, 6x75 millimeter. I'm pretty sure that's right. And I don't know why I remember it, because I haven't had to think of it in a couple of years. But anyway, but nonetheless, I mean, there was a struggle, and it still exists, because if I locked myself in, you know, my shop, I could probably make 10 or 20,000 of those things, and I could make a whole bunch of money. The problem is, it is the simplest and most superficial thing that you could ever make, which is more or less a veneer. It's a block-off plate. It offers you nothing. And even though it's made of lightweight materials, it's still adding weight to your car for absolutely no reason other than you being vain. So, you know, it really was more on the.
You could say safety.
Yeah,
you could.
But
You could
I think the Hello
zero safety.
the Drifto Hella Flush kids, though, man, they want that carbon fiber steering.
Well, I mean specifically that steering wheel plate. So
yeah.
That's where it all began. And then it was like, all right, well, let's make dash panels, and let's make air ducts for brake vents. And then I spent a few hundred hours learning the hard way, as you do whenever you try anything, but especially composites, defining a shape to make a carbon fiber insert for an E46, so that when you get rid of the carpet and the insulation and the air ducts, instead of having a 2-inch transition between your left and right feet, I created a shape that was beautiful and flat and had an integral dead pedal, created a mold from that. Amazingly, it worked. And I think I've made 40 of those floors. So, you know, not quite like Mazda, but, you know, I think most weekends out of the 600 or so parts that I've made in the last 10 years, somebody somewhere on this planet is driving a race car around with something that I've made. And I've had the pure joy and suffering of making every single one of those parts. So, and then that was kind of coinciding with when I had run my apparent 7-year course of doing the same job for, you know, one stint. And I started my next job for exactly 7 years and 0 days, which was I worked at a helicopter company. And ultimately what I would do there was be involved with composite rotor blades. So the rotor blade on a helicopter 50 years ago, like on what Marine One is, the presidential helicopter, that was actually the helicopter we specialized at Carson Helicopters in Percy. They take that aircraft that was certified in 1961, and they've adapted every single upgrade that has come since then. And that is why the leader of the free world still flies around in a helicopter that is 60 years old right about now. So of those 35 upgrades that Frank Carson and his team have done over the last 50 years, just down the road from me in Pennsylvania, We ultimately did team up with NASA, and we created an asymmetric airfoil that was more efficient. The more efficiently you go through the air, the less resistance, the less power needed. You can lift, in this case, 1,500 pounds more just by changing the shape of the airfoil. You can go further, you can go faster, et cetera. So this all took place in maybe 5 or 6 years. So on one end of the spectrum, I admittedly was making the most useless piece that you could ever make. It existed only to look good, and it was entirely superfluous. Without not too many tries in between, I suddenly found myself, and ultimately by the end of those 7 years, as the supervisor of production for a composite rotor blade for that same helicopter that had 500 individual components, and I could smack the crap out of every single one of you to death, and then we would put it in our machine and bend it 4 times more than it ever saw in flight. It would pass, and then you could put 10,000 hours on it. So that's the draw to composites. You can make any shape, and if you're going to be flying presidents around, they might as well, be able to carry an extra 1,000 pounds around. But it comes with a lot of complexity, a lot of accountability, and the great opportunity to take something equivalent to a boat anchor and place it in a dumpster at the expense of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours.
That was fantastic, by the way. I'm sure building helicopter stuff and protecting the leader of the free world is really important in your book. But I just got to say, kudos for making dead pedals. Dead pedals are the greatest thing ever. And when we didn't have one in our race car, it was the worst ever. And Chrissy will join me in this. A race car without a dead pedal might as well not be a race car.
It's a sadness.
Well, I know we're on the tail end of it, but it's like, presidents are temporary, but Wu-Tang and dead pedals are forever.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to see that on the back of your T-shirt for your race team.
I'm writing that down right now. I'm stealing that. Wu-Tang.
I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed with, first of all, the availability of Artisan Research formed to function, because the dichotomy we all live with is the, what am I paying here for, it to look good or actually be good? And I was super pumped to get formed to function, but shit, a lot more people heard of Wu-Tang, right?
It's because they're forever.
That might be the title of the episode when you see it out now.
I probably will, actually. All right. So on your Insta story, we see a lot of detailed work in your stuff. What piece of advice would you give to anybody who wants to try and is just too impatient to even consider this stuff?
Well, I think especially, through composites, as I've said, it encapsulates a dozen different skill sets, and it's what keeps things interesting. After being involved with cars, for example, for 15 years and doing a number of things with them, there's times when I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get in my car and just join the group of people who go in their car and do other things. To keep it interesting, I've entered this black hole of composites where my work will never be done. I will never make something that is, outside of the realm of possibility. There's always something to learn, et cetera. So, the advantage that we have today is that you're probably not going to invent anything new, most days of the week. I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for me too. But 100 years ago, I like to think, me and Mental would have been walking around, Tyler too. We were picked up, just click off a few patents a day. Like, available.
Like Edison.
Yeah. Now I literally have a friend, shout out to my buddy Ray from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He is a lawyer who specializes in intellectual property. And he spent so much time so thoroughly melting my brain just how to trademark the words form to function, where I went full Homer Simpson backing up into the bush. And I was like, man, I can do so many things, but one of them is nothing to do with whatever that is. So, there's a lot to be said about people who can specialize in that instead. So,
well, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to ask something that's not on the sheet. So excuse me if I surprise you with this question, but, you talked at the beginning about, the part for the steering wheel and how it left you unfulfilled. So, but you also started in the race shop with the Ferraris and the Bugattis and everything. Like, let's talk about form versus function, because you've been surrounded by all of these beautiful things, but you seem to gravitate towards the functional, the helicopter and the race car part and the things like that. So, does the beauty of the part matter? Like, do you look at it that way, or is it like all mechanical when you design something?
Well, I think, it's definitely a fine combination of the two, and depending on what you're making, it could be, shifting in either direction. And kind of to combine both answers into one here, what I would recommend to anyone doing anything is, you're not inventing anything, right? You don't need to contact my buddy Ray. Look it up on the internet. You can figure out anything. So, if you want to get into composites, watch somebody else and listen to how they spent $400 and failed the first time, and go from there. Don't just dive in on just about anything yourself these days. So, the balance of form and function. I mean, ideally, if I'm going to be completely satisfied, it's got to have both, because again, for example, this air dam. And an air dam, again, is something to physically create a dam for air between two planes, the vertical face of a front bumper and the horizontal face that is parallel to the road surface. So if you're doing it right, you've got some gigantic splitter where if you go a few inches off, will completely rip off the underside of your car. And that is a flat, large plane, and it is going to split the air. It's going to make that air decide, am I going above this car or am I going below? I better figure it out real quick. And if it goes down below, it's going to be entering a low pressure zone, which ultimately contributes to that car getting sucked down and compressing that front suspension so that you can get yourself at a higher speed before you get yourself into trouble. Or it's going to go over top and it's going to get sandwiched in between, in that interior corner of the vertical face and the horizontal face. So, the function there is simply filling in every single grain of matter that creates an air dam, right? And you're going to grab that. But the form of it is literally just taking a step back and trying out a different radius, trying out a different transition, and seeing what actually looks good. Because, granted, some things that work well do not look beautiful, but if you have the opportunity to go 2 for 2, the good thing about composites is you're gonna have a lot of time on your hands, so you might as well make it look good. And the way that it works, if you wanted to make, a part, for example, an existing part, I'm going to take a hood. The first thing I'm going to do to that hood is, modify it. If I'm going to put a hood scoop on it, or vents or louvers or whatever, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make it perfect. Because when I mold that part and then make that mold perfect, I can make perfect parts. But if I don't have something that is perfect every step of the way, then I'm going to produce something that is imperfect, and I will have to finish it every single time. So whether it's outlining a trim line or polishing a mold surface every step of the way to be a mirror finish, it really should be that balance of form and function. But that said, I do like making aerodynamic parts, because when there are little pinholes and air bubbles and other voids, I, first of all, I acknowledge their existence, because it keeps me at like this local average lately of being 99% perfect. But for complex parts, I mean, even helicopter blades, like, we use body filler. We use very expensive body filler on helicopter blades, and then they get painted. If you saw a raw helicopter blade, it would be, porous in some spots. It would have to be filled, et cetera. So, I definitely love me some function when I can have a coarse finish. And if anybody says anything, I'll bump into them and make them kick my splitter and, break their chin. But, again, ideally, if Bruce Lee were the one teaching you how to do composites, you'd probably make something that has a wonderful function to it, and it just happens to look beautiful.
And if I may just interject here, as the guy who knows absolutely nothing about what he just
go, Tyler,
on background.
You can't, but thanks for asking.
Thanks a lot, Josh. I've been sitting here too,
I'm just kidding.
God, anyway, I just want to say that from the outsider's perspective, seeing what Josh does and having a huge appreciation for his work, that and I know what I know, but I don't know what he knows. And walking in and seeing him involved in some of these projects and stuff like that, it's just like mind blowing to me. The level of patience, and B, the attention to detail, the foresight, all of these things that go into like mold making and the process that he follows. And by comparison, my work is so structured. Broken part. What's the broken part? How do we fix it? Take it on, put it off. Take it on, put it off. Whatever. Even if it's the most complex engine ever, it's still very straightforward, right? It's just parts and screws. And then he's working in all this free space. You know, I walk in there, he looks like Picasso or something like that. You know, he's like covered in all kinds of stuff, and he's just filling in and sanding, and like it's all this like very like intricate work with his hands and his mind. It's pretty wild to see.
Yeah, it absolutely is an art. Probably, you know, it is the great, you know, what do we call it, the Venn diagram of where art and mechanics come together in the creation of, I mean, aero. We've done a lot of aero work, ham-fisted, tremendously like plywood and fiberglass kind of aero, and you know, it smooth is fast, not only in driving. So, you know, making and I love what you said about making sure that the mold is perfect, because each time you make a mold from that mold, it will be slightly less perfect. And you know, the perfection needed, it's like the bricklayer. If the bricklayer is off a millimeter on the first row, it's only going to compound after that. So I don't have the patience for such things.
Well, you know what? Some days I've learned that I don't either, and
It's totally accurate.
I've got a number of projects, you know, as we've discussed, we all do, and you know, less is more, right? You do less and you obsess. That's what somebody who's far more successful than me once said. I like to have so much shit going on at once that I don't know what day of the week it is, and I'm so surprised to see what we're working on today. Whether, you know, especially now buying a home and you know, refinishing a garage, redesigning the curve of a driveway, making new furniture for my home, you know, doing landscaping. It's like, I've never done a lot of this before, but I've done enough things that are similar. And there's a bunch of question marks in between, including how I'm going to pay for it. But, you know, in due time, we're going to get there. So what really draws me, you know, to the composites, again, having experienced something like Tyler is doing here. When I came in here, I just took a lap. You know, he was trying to keep up with me as I just took in every, you know, bit of this shop. How big is it? How many cars can you put in? How many shelves does each car take up? And on that note, imagine how many shelves a helicopter takes up. There was buildings as big as this garage just for one helicopter to take it apart. But, you know, obviously here it's like, you're going to have X amount of cars come in and you're going to make this much. You have your expenses, and it's perhaps more linear. I'll go into the shop someday and, you know, I don't exactly know what that shape is until I'm done, but every step along the way, I'm just picturing what my goal is. And then if it all works out, I'll sell a bunch of them and make a whole bunch of money. But for the first 100 days, I'm just hanging out, you know, arts and crafts, like it's the Discovery Room, third grade art class. And I got to tell you, that's the place to be.
I'm going to jump in front of Jeff, because that actually bleeds really well into this question. So, you know, you're talking about these experiences and how building a perfect mold, and really that's almost a life lesson, because even if you just have a process to not create something physical, but to create a piece of data or to create a product that someone else uses. And if your process, your mold isn't perfect, you're just making more work for yourself, because now you got to make that correction 100 times. And you should always make the correction in the mold or in the creation process. And I love that. And that's how your brain works. And I want to give you a little chance to brag there. So your experience with working with composite materials and obviously developing a very finely tuned tactile sense of how it feels and what your eye and your fingers coordinate to. How's this bled into the stuff that you've done? You're talking about redesigning the curve of your driveway. And specifically, I want to talk about that giant piece of live wood that you were turning into the desk.
So I think, you know, what I like about the composite thing is that, you know, by definition, composite materials is a composition of things. So even concrete is composite. It is sand, it is concrete, it is stone, it's water. So, you know, fiberglass and carbon fiber would be considered advanced composites. So, you know, it's structural, it's aeronautical, it's, out in space somewhere. But it is, you know, again, using different manufacturing methods to make something and using different materials, whether it is, unidirectional carbon fiber that is super stiff only in one direction, but would fold like your fingers if you squeeze your hand in the other direction, or is it woven? Is it fiberglass? Is there a foam core? Does it have a Nomex honeycomb core? What is the purpose of this panel? All these different ways to make it, all these different materials. So something like my desk, what you're speaking about, growing up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, I feel very lucky. And as Christian will tell you, with traveling with Extreme, we do see most major cities, and a lot of them look the same after, a few blocks in. New Orleans is special. I like Nashville. Ain't nothing wrong with, Miami, especially in the winter. I love the Pacific Northwest, et cetera. But after a while, a lot of places really look the same. So
yeah, you get the shopping center with an Applebee's, a Chili's, the the outlet mall. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody told me one time, the problem with America is it's just too damn big. And there's a lot of stuff going on here. And from traveling, I think what I've really learned, aside of our temperamental season changes, is that I've really grown to love Bucks County. And, we settled on the east coast of this country, right? The 13 colonies, Pennsylvania, showed up pretty early there, right? So in the area that I'm at, which is north of Philadelphia, where, just last week I went into Philadelphia. It was a tourist-owned city, and saw, just peeked my head in the window, look at the Liberty Bell, stood next to Ben Franklin's grave, and just kind of like absorbed some energy from it. It is still beaming, by the way. And just really took note of how lucky I am to be in this area. So you go a little bit north of where I'm at, and there's a place called Lumberville, and they have the oldest lumber yard in the country. And there is, stone buildings that, indigenous to this area, and lots of covered bridges. So, I love advanced material. I love carbon fiber. I like titanium and, different flavors of structural aluminum. But I also like being in the middle of a forest, which is actually where I just moved from. I lived in an 85-acre forest for 5 years, where I was just one dude in a park trying not to set a forest fire, which would be the ultimate irony. If you've ever seen the billboard that I defaced as a child, only Josh can prevent wildfires. So now I'm living in a forest trying not to burn it down. But anyway, the composition for something like that desk, taking a big live edge piece of wood and attaching that to a heavy duty steel frame, and powder coating the steel frame black, and, putting it in a way where when you're looking at it, some ways it's very like, stout and just is like immediately a family heirloom. But in other ways, when you look at it, you don't even actually see the frame. You just see a floating piece of wood. So, there's metal, which is measuring and cutting and grinding and welding. And you guessed it, grinding down some of my welds, not because they're not high quality, but because I don't want you to be able to figure out how I put this thing together. And then dropping it off and letting someone else sandblast it. There's a pro tip for you. Jeez Louise. That was I have some stories that are the worst of my life from sandblasting. But, taking that, and now, you're refinishing it, you have fasteners, drilling into the wood, finding ways to hold it, without it moving around. So again, I'm drawn to where the creativity will thrive. I would much rather make, if I could only make 10 parts in my life and they were all, aircraft, 10 planes, something like that, I would much rather do that than make 10,000 things like that little horn plate. So, again, if I were smart, I would still go home right now and make 20,000 of those and sell it. But, the grand scheme is going from the automotive world, restoring things of the past, working on helicopters that were clinging to the past. They're actually about to finally replace that aircraft with something called an S-92. And that was certified in 1992. So congratulations, President. Your helicopter is now only 40 years old instead of 60. and it costs $35 million instead of 10, but don't worry, we'll pay for that. So we go from the past to hanging on to the future, or to hanging on to the present. And ultimately my next intended move, I'm eyeing up about 2 years from now, is to go out west to California. Likely, it's kind of cliche, but SpaceX is certainly leading the way with the exploration of other planets, right? So I'm timing it, and I have been for the last 5 years, to kind of elevate myself in as many ways as possible, so that as they enter the phase of their business where they're sending things to Mars, that is when I'll work there. Currently, they're successfully being the taxi service for our astronauts and the astronauts from other agencies from around the world. bringing them up. Formerly, we have been relying on the Russian spaceship, which has been pretty much unchanged for the last 50 years, and they're all pretty much crossing their fingers the whole time. So from what I've learned, the average SpaceX employee will crumble after about 2 years. So I'm trying to wait until they start to Mars, and then I'll put my 2 years in. And then, the ultimate goal, I think, for a lot of people is to do what Tyler's doing. And I'm 35. Tyler is 29. So, I'm impressed to come into a place that's bigger than my shop. Is, he's got employees, and full-time employees, kind of scare the crap out of me in a lot of ways. But obviously it's how you need to do it to make money. So, I'm impressed by seeing the enterprise that he's created here. It is the ultimate goal to be your own boss someday. I think most people would agree. You just have to figure out what that is. So I've firmly established my roots in what I'm calling my get rich slow plan. And after working on old cars and old helicopters and new spaceships, if I want to go do my own thing, I'm pretty sure they'll let me make whatever I want after that.
Well, we definitely wish Elon well. I'm not sure what's harder, launching people into space and landing booster rockets simultaneously on the same barge, or building a quality car out of the NUMMI plant. But that's a different episode. We'll cover that later.
This has been great, but we want to bring it back to like amateur stuff, because this isn't like the TED Talk. We're not as smart as you, Josh.
Yeah, we're definitely going to bend this back. We are an instructional podcast. So with all of your knowledge in all of these different areas, what can a home gamer do? We're all Lemons people. We're all wrenching on the weekend. We're all paying for all of our materials. Where is an area where we can get into either a composite or maybe not? Maybe you're going to tell us to stick to metal. What is it that we can do to start building our own surfaces and making our own car maybe slip through the stream a little bit better in a little bit more positive way?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I have a pretty good idea of your program. So, say you wanted to design a composite component for your car. You're going to design that shape. You're going to acquire the materials to make the part, to make the mold, the necessary equipment. And the unfortunate thing about composites is, as soon as you leave the very basic realm of it, you are now in the need of vacuum pumps and vacuum lines, but they better be high temperature, because you're curing at 150 or 300 degrees. And I mean, much like Tyler here and a lot of us, like you think you're never done buying tools. Like, holy crap. Again, in composites, you need to have a metal shop, wood shop, et cetera. So anyway, I would say the best thing you can do is, you think about that $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. I would take that money and just go buy another car, a better car. That would be the best thing. If there's anything you can learn from my career at this point. But the thing is, if you want to make composites, by all means, I highly recommend it. You can make anything that you want. And there's a lot of gratification in that. There's a lot of therapy in that, to invest so much time and be rewarded. But start small. If you can make a dash panel, you could literally take a mirror, go to Home Goods. I think that's who I spent all my money.
Oh yeah,
at.
Home Goods, absolutely.
That is the bane of my existence. They are the reason why I spend 40 hours building a desk, because I'm not going to buy something, first of all, that 17 of my friends already have, and like it broke in the cart, So, go to Home Goods, buy a mirror instead. Now you have a perfectly flat surface. It's mirror finish, right? You can apply some mold release to that. You could even go a step further and apply a liquid that's called polyvinyl alcohol. It is the most magical shit I've ever heard of. It comes in a liquid. It's green and goopy. It dries as a film. Ultimately, it becomes a layer of saran wrap. And when you separate your part from your mold, that layer of saran wrap will have that part pop off instead of have your mirror shatter into 1,000 pieces. And now you have a very expensive mirror that is delivering into your race car.
Hold on for 1 second. Bill, get me some of that polyvinyl alcohol, all right? That was just for a listener. Keep going.
We'll have some tomorrow morning. It's cool.
See, I think if we put Josh and Bill together,
oh yes,
we could probably have a Lemons.
You are on the wrong podcast. You need to be on that guy's podcast.
Yeah.
We have a friend who is a doctorate in. He's a ceramist and has his own chemical company in your.
So he
neck
just
of the
makes
woods.
that crap. We just say like, I need something to fix this problem.
We like ceramics. Ceramics like high temperatures. But anyway, you get. Hey, what's up, dog? You get some of the special sauce, it just creates a barrier. And now you can, lay up a panel on this mirror. So you take some resin, it's going to be 2 pieces. It's going to shorten your life the more you breathe it in. So do it outside. You're going to mix it together, hopefully pretty close to the correct
that was
ratio.
your safety advice, by the way. That Chrissy got very happy that that he said use.
I've done resin. I've done this.
Yeah.
I've breathed it in. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's boat talk. Got it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, resin puts hair on your lungs. It lets you breathe alive. But in all seriousness, though, PPE for life. I mean, I love taking pride in trying to preserve my hands, which are my life, my eyes. I mean, especially. If what good is my race car if I can't see because I took out an eye when I was making a part for it? And you've seen the horror stories. So definitely, just like when you're riding a motorcycle, full Power Ranger all the time. But now you got your mirror, you have your mold release down, you mix your resin outside, with all the ventilators and spacesuit, why not? And you pour your resin out on your mirror, you lay some carbon fiber cloth on it. You take a $2 2-inch chip brush from the Ace Hardware store. You cut those brushes so they're 3/4 of an inch thick, and you do what's called stifling, which is where you push down that carbon fiber from the top, and you try and impregnate that resin through it from below. And once you've done that, you put another layer on it, and then you add a little bit more resin, and you can also use a body filler squeegee, and you try and saturate that fabric with resin. And taking a very important step back, carbon fiber, composites, or you picture CFRP, or carbon fiber reinforced plastic. So it's plastic that's reinforced by carbon fiber. So epoxy is a plastic. If you take epoxy and you put it on that mirror, and the same exact stuff, if you made a proper panel that you could fly into space, but you leave out the carbon fiber and it hardens, you could break that in half like peanut butter brittle. You take carbon fiber as a dry fabric, and it has the consistency of your t-shirt. It is pliable. You won't be able to pull it apart. It's still going to have good tensile strength, but it doesn't have any strength. Only when those two components are at the correct ratio, which by weight is roughly 65% weight fabric, 35% liquid. And if you have not enough liquid, not enough resin, then you have a dry part. So now your part is limp. If you have a resin-rich part, now it's heavy for no reason, and you have unsupported resin, which makes it brittle, and it's a headache. But that said, again, you want to make something, go get a mirror, get it, spend $100, and trimming carbon fiber, drilling holes. It's a world of pain. I have thousands of dollars of equipment on special blades to cut carbon fiber, sanding blocks that's all diamond grit. If you have the right stuff, you're not quite sanding balsa wood like you're going flying with your buddies, but it's not exactly like sanding tile either. So but yeah, start small, start with something flat. The more compound you get, the more intricate it gets, the bigger it gets, you're dramatically increases your chances to think of new swear words.
Yeah, and it sounds like technique-wise, it's not that drastically different from laying fiberglass, in some of those other areas. But it sounds like the curing is very different.
Potentially, it's identical. I mean, there are resin systems that are higher performing that you could buy without too much money or any special licenses. And whether you choose to make a very strong, very stiff, very light carbon fiber part for $100. You can make that same part for $70 just by subbing fiberglass, which is not going to be as stiff. It's going to be a little heavier, and it's just not going to be quite worth it in the sense that the labor is all the effort. Whenever you see a carbon fiber hood and then you see all that fiberglass behind it, it drives me nuts. They save like $40. The material isn't that expensive, or maybe more so on a hood, but it's the labor. It's making the mold. It really, they're, again, at bottom line, they're trying to save that few percent, but it's exactly identical to working with fiberglass. The changes come when you do it in a more advanced way. As we said, we're looking for that perfect ratio of 65%, 35%. So what do? You get a vacuum pump. You pull 1 atmosphere of pressure, 14.7. If you're good, we'll call it 14 PSI. So you have a 10 by 10 panel. You're putting the equivalent of 1,400 pounds over that 10 by 10 panel. And that is going to take your carbon fiber, which now has this other magical material. It's tent material. It's nylon. It's also coated in this, delicious magical release agent that keeps your parts going into the trash. and then you put some breather in, which allows the air to evacuate and also simultaneously absorbs the excess resin, and then it's all encapsulated by a vacuum bag. And now you're going to put that 1,400 pounds of pressure over that 10 by 10 panel. It's going to compress it. It's going to remove air bubbles. It's going to remove, any imperfections. It's going to get rid of that excess resin, and you'll get to something, that has that optimal ratio. But you just spend a lot more money.
Yeah, but vacuum bags are, you don't need a kiln. You could do it with vacuum bag. You could do it with, heat. You could, obviously you're not going to be, pro level pumping out hundreds and hundreds of parts and making lots of dollars. But it sounds like if you've done fiberglass and you're willing to take a step into a new material, you might have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like we said, it's, you're going to make mistakes with most new things you try. So if you're going to make something, sure, make it out of fiberglass. I made a couple prototypes out of fiberglass. Absolutely. Or sometimes I'll make a panel that's just one layer. But it's all, at the end of the day, most things that we do in the race car world is how much time do you have and how much money do you have? And usually how much time and money do you have left? Because it's probably not much. So, but I would absolutely encourage, someone even like Tyler, he has all sorts of carbon fiber parts on his race car. We're building a new race car. He'll probably make carbon fiber race car parts with me for our car. And he'll have an advantage because I own all the equipment. But, someone who's into mechanical stuff, if you're into woodworking, if you're into pottery, if you're into painting, I mean, it all comes in so well together. So I would definitely recommend to give it a whirl, but definitely watch a few people make mistakes on YouTube. Or at least, call me. I've got some incredible stories of things not going quite well.
All right. Yeah. This is a fascinating episode. And honestly, I think we could probably sit here for 3 hours, but people only listen to us either on the way to a race or the way to work. We need to have you back on because I would love to talk about the oven and all the other stuff that you've done. But I do want to take a slight detour, and I apologize, but I warned you this was coming. So way back early on when I was racing with the Three Pedal Mafia, I think literally one of our first races in New Hampshire, we were up there, and a lot of the race cars, and you'll still see them. I still see them all the time. In fact, I saw some Rally Baby suits this weekend that had the phrase "Live like Dave." And I had asked around before I knew you. I'd asked around the story. And it was like, oh, is this guy Dave? He was really awesome. He was a helicopter pilot. And it's just a reminder. He had passed away. It was a reminder of what are you doing for quality in your life? Are you living well? And I swear to you, I used to ask myself that question all the time. I'd ask myself that question on deployment. I would ask myself that when I was doing a road trip. I asked myself when I was working for Extreme. And embarrassingly, I had never made the connection until you told the story at the Extreme Christmas party a couple of years ago. But I would argue that a great many people that have raced, especially in the Northeast, have seen these stickers. I never knew the tie-in, but it is something that immediately struck a chord with me and I've kept with me for years. But I would like, for those who don't know, to hear the rest of the story, if that's okay.
So it's interesting to hear that story because I don't know that I'd actually heard it all, or at least in one shot to kind of put it all together. But David, Jenny, my older brother, my best friend, we lost him in 2013. Obviously it was sudden and traumatic and, turned my whole life upside down. He was 3.5, 4 years older than me. So by the time I could do anything, he was already doing that well and doing the next thing that I couldn't do. And I was born into a family that raced sled dogs when I was born. So before we had cars, we had 25 Siberian Huskies at a time. And, there's pictures of me on the centerfold of a sled dog racing magazine as a baby in the cargo area. And at that time, my brother was already racing in Kid and Mutt, which was the one kid, one dog class. I got into sled dog racing and he started riding a bike. I started riding a bike. He started skateboarding. I started skateboarding. He was on to the next thing. So, I think there was a lot of, classic brotherly love of, he forged the way. I know that I had a much easier, childhood because he had to do all the arguing and then I got to just do what he did, at that same time and, kind of saved 4 years. So I appreciate that. But, there was just the classic of, whatever I've been coded with, with my DNA and what I'm interested in, and obviously mechanical things and creative things, which I can absolutely, tie back to specific ancestors. He was always one step ahead of me. But, it was that balance of like bringing me along with him and elevating me. But then, moments later, finding that point, like right before my arm would break as he put me in like some professional wrestling move, and then reminded me that we weren't, quite as good as the friends we thought. So, you can imagine that progressing. We start driving. I mean, I learned how to drive stick in his Firebird before I had my license. And then when my mother taught me how to drive stick, when I got my permit, she asked me how I already knew how to drive. And I don't know. I think I just was not, I was jerking on the wheel to distract her and make her complain about something else to throw her
Are you
off.
sure it wasn't your grandmother's Firebird? I heard a lot of grandmothers out there have Firebirds. No, I'm sorry. Keep going. Tell us about your brother.
Both of my parents had Firebirds. I'm actually the only one to not own a Firebird. My brother had two, so I think we're good. But he started racing, and he started with autocrossing, just like the cool kids did back in 1999. And he started going to track days, and by the time I got my first car, I was taking pretty much my first car to an autocross. And the other interesting thing about him is that I think he had one job when he was 11 years old as a dishwasher at a pizza place. There was some kind of contractual agreement, apparently, and he he resigned his position as executive dishwasher, and then he never worked for anyone else again. He had a webpage business in like the 90s and kind of like forged that. Got into he actually sold body kits like back in the day. There was a company called Irabuni or something like that, and he redid their website, and when he got to the page of how to become a distributor, he became a distributor, and then he started an automotive business. He ultimately would go on to swap, I think, something like 200 Toyota MR2 engines to a guy that he never met, that unfortunately my family cannot find in Japan, just to kind of thank this guy and unfortunately let him know that my brother's passed. A guy, just off a virtual handshake, he did 200 JDM MR2 engines, came cut right behind the rear seat. They were stacked 3 high, 7 deep. My dad would unload them on the forklift, and either people would come from all over the country to have him do this, 100 horsepower upgrade, and then, kind of like what Tyler's doing here, all, brakes, suspension, intercoolers, racing stuff, whatever. And he just kind of always enterprised whatever he wanted to get into. So the two poignant things I think are just having just being aloof to the possibility of failure and setting this precedent for me, which I think I do a pretty good job of. And some days I know I am, and some days I'm like, whenever you're ready. But whatever you want to do, why wouldn't you go do it? Something maybe that hopefully that comes off as more philosophical as it sounds. Like, it should just be that easy. We don't have much time, and unfortunately he didn't have much time at all. He passed away when he was 30. I'm 35, so it's weird to be older than my older brother was, but fortunately he fit an entire lifetime into 30 years. But it really set that example that just the same way. And obviously my parents were a huge part of it. Shout out to all the parents who, as soon as they have kids, just made every single thing about them, because they helped form my brother, they helped form me, and it just led me to why wouldn't I go apply at a vintage restoration shop? Why wouldn't I apply at a helicopter shop, even though I on paper might not have any business doing there? Eventually, if you want to learn something, that is so much more important than your qualifications. In a lot of ways, it's all about your attitude and your enthusiasm. So he obviously was a go-getter, just to say the least. But what was really cool about it was the sense of community that he found, and what made people gravitate towards him. And whether it's people that still have their MR2s that have his engine in it, or people that he has raced with, people that I still race with. Some of those people, I've known for 15 or 20 years, and I'll be at the driver's meeting and, lock eyes with somebody that raced with my brother back before I could drive. So, stuff like that's pretty cool. But I think the best part about racing for me, and I'm sure it's what drew my brother in, is that if you can picture your first time going to racetrack and your first time, getting buckled in and putting in your radio and putting on your helmet and your Hans device and the window nets and doing the radio checks and feeling your heart pound and going down pit lane and thinking, if you're anything like me, as those cars go roaring by, you're seconds away from finally going on a racetrack, what you want to do your whole life. What I very prominently remember thinking at that exact moment was, I would really like to be back at home on my couch because I am out of my element. It's that feeling of, similar to like skydiving, right? And that's kind of, that's the feeling that we chase. And it turns out after a few laps, I realized, just like my brother and, everybody that's listening to this, is, holy crap, this is the most fun thing I've ever done. So when I get the chance to go to a racetrack, whether it's NJMP for the 100th time or a new racetrack with extreme experience, which is a lot of fun, and I would love 90 seconds to share the joy later on about that. But I do know one thing, and it's that, just the same exact way my brother did, when I go to a racetrack, whether it's Lemons and there's 150 teams, 600 people, probably 20, 30 states, or even Extreme, where we have 25 instructors from 20 states. I know that no matter what racetrack I'm at, no matter who I'm racing with, no matter whom I'm racing against, no matter whom I'm instructing, no matter who these guests are that are going to drive our supercars, we have all come to the racetrack because we are going to do the thing that we love the most. And we are going to be in the best mood because of it. And we're going to be surrounded by like-minded people who are just glad to be there. And the only time I will ever see these people are when we're doing the thing that we love the most. So, again, I think many wonderful qualities about my brother, but it was just, he was not afraid to blaze a new path for himself. But he really made sure that he brought a lot of people along with him. So, the most satisfying thing now is, again, whether it's somebody who, shares a picture of a car that they worked on with him, or, later on as he got into flying helicopters and was a flight instructor, I have people messaging me saying how, they were about to give up after a failed check ride. But my brother was able to, convince them to try again and again. And now those people are fighting fires across the country. And, they credit that to the influence that they got from my brother. So, I think in a lot of ways, the most important thing that pretty much anybody can do with their life is just assess, what you're doing, and then who you're doing it with, and how that makes you feel. So, it was a good, at that point, I think I was 27 when I lost my brother, and we're doing okay. Like, we got a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to, but obviously nothing can replace your brother. But I'm fortunate that, what he left with me, with his legacy was something that, promotes that community, and,
I
really promotes doing, just trying to get the very last bit out of every day. I mean, obviously that's cliche and no one actually does that, but on those days when you don't want to do anything, that's the ones that are most important to, to really look in the mirror and just think, not everybody gets to be here today. So let's make it count.
And I thank you for sharing that. I know that wasn't necessarily easy, but you're absolutely right. It's a bigger influence than I think even you can measure. And you've obviously put a great deal of measure into that. So I know that was highly personal. We talked about it beforehand. So thank you. So next time you guys see those stickers, know what that's about.
Yeah, we've run them on our cars for a very long time, and I think the Honda is the last car that has one. So we might have to get some fresh ones for the new cars.
Might have to be another round. Absolutely another round.
Yeah. We've been in the Lemons community since 2010, and when we first got there, Rally Baby, which was part of the crew, was a force to be reckoned with, both in the paddock, bending the elbow 16 ounces at a time, and on the racetrack. And, they were some of the people that we first really bonded with. I mean, I definitely know that I have shared some track time with your brother, and whether I knew it at the time, because I didn't even know who he was really, other than, that crew, everybody we share the track with is our brothers and sisters. And we've said this 1,000 times. It doesn't matter whether I know you once, twice, or 1,000 times, putting your life out there. And that's really what we're doing. We're going door handle to door handle. There are people that I trust with, hundreds and hundreds of horsepower and thousands of pounds, literally 10 inches from where I also have thousands of pounds and hundreds of horsepower. And you build that trust really quickly with the people that can do it again and again and keep everybody safe. So yeah, it's the community is more than just, I want to go fast and I want to beat that guy. When you're on that racetrack, it's a partnership. The partnership with the other competitors. So we all share that. And
I can imagine. I remember those early days with you guys when we had a DJ. Shout out to DJ Pete, somebody I raced with.
Oh yeah.
I learned at a Lemons race. He actually DJ'd my senior prom, and I didn't know him for 5 years. And that's a true story. But there was a pig roast. There was people hitting the 10-foot beach balls with the golf carts. And I remember I jumped on my motorcycle or a little scooter, and I went through that 140 car paddock just to make sure there wasn't a single person that was not at that party. And I was correct. Every single person was at that party.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There were some hella parties.
The true epitome that, what's Lemons like? Well, imagine a party and a race breaks out.
Still real racing.
Still
Still real racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we've shared the paddock with some great people, and your brother was definitely one of them, and you've been one of them too. I mean, we've shared obviously the track plenty of times and Extreme Experience and all that. I've been guest.
Well, and so he could talk about Extreme Experience, Chrissy.
There you go.
Chrissy,
that's
there
why
you go.
I was doing it. Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yeah, well, you're taking too long.
Sorry.
Oh. No, we want to hear about Extreme Experience. Let's hear about Artisan Research, where other people can find you, and then give your spiel.
So if you're interested in following the adventures and learning along the way, the shop Artisan Research, so that would be on Instagram at Artisan Research. There you'll find a lot of things that I have made. I don't really do too much day to day with that. Ironically, you'll get a very up close and personal behind the scenes on how you make pretty much everything in my catalog, because I bet you don't have the ambition to do it, which is why I'm not afraid to share it. And so true. That is just on my personal Instagram, which is at I am Josh Jenny. And whether I'm building a desk or reshaping my driveway, refinishing thing, or building something that might end up on a spaceship someday, you might get a peek at it ahead of time. And actually, it's funny, Jeff, you're actually largely the reason that I am involved with Extreme Experience. So I do thank you for that. What my understanding of the order of events was that Mike Carr got signed on because of you. Yep. And Mike Carr emailed Cal Denice, one of the chief instructors, very good friend of mine. He's now back down in Georgia raising his beautiful family.
Oh, we've had him on the show a couple times.
Yep.
I'll call him up real quick. I'd like him to just nod. You got to cite your resources.
It's absolutely. Days, right? Cal called me. He says, I need more Lemons drivers. You got any Lemons drivers out there? I said, how many do you need? He's like, as many as you got. And I'm like, all right, well, there's this crew, and I'm going to call Mike, and he's going to put the word out on the Facebook. And yeah, it's kind of how it started.
I tell you, 10 years later, going full circle, which I guess we'll get to in just a sec, in a moment, but it really has come a long way. But apparently you got the okay to Mike. And then I was the last person. I have an email from Cal. Mike just says, hey, I got one more guy. His name's Josh. I race with him, whatever. And Cal replies, okay, but he's it. And that meant that I was the last one. So, okay, but he's it was how I got signed up for my first event at my home track, NJFP.
So glamorous.
I did an event, had the time of my life. And obviously we can appreciate driving, crap can cars. So, I get there and I'm like, I should have recognized the feeling of growth, which was I was feeling the same thing I felt when I walked up to a red Ferrari for a job interview, and the same thing I felt when I walked into a helicopter for an interview. When I walked up to these 12 supercars for the quote unquote interview, I thought to myself, I don't belong here. And, now I find myself in a Lamborghini essentially on this interview. First session of warm-ups for 5 laps, you drive. One, so that you can show that you're a competent driver, because if you're not, you're probably not going to be able to instruct someone who also isn't. And two, so that that seasoned instructor can demonstrate that instruction to you. Then you switch. So now they are driving and you are instructing them. And most of my background was racing. A lot of it was racing. So I think that the two pieces of feedback that I got were when I went up onto the smooth FIA curves at NJMP, very thoughtfully, my instructor, Tom Hazen, shout out, he's the man, Purple Hazen. He actually is not related to Jimi Hendrix at all. But he was my mentor.
T-Honey, as the ladies like to call him.
Yeah, that's right. He was my mentor. And when I went over those curbing, he said, and we're going to stay 3 feet away from those curves. And I thought to myself, way to go, dipshit. Why were you driving on the curbs in someone else's Lamborghini anyways? And that's how you nicely
curbs.
That's how you nicely say to stay off the curbs. The other thing was, Josh, your hand is kind of in my way and your instructions aren't that good. So I was like, all right, move my hand out of the way and make my hand gestures more useful. So, that was 2017, my first event. I think I paid my own dime for the first 7 events, went to a half dozen new racetracks. And then 2018, on top of overseeing the production of a rotor blade, I just went full time most of my weekends, 30 weekends a year. I just did the extreme gig. I think from racing, I've been to 8 racetracks because of extreme, or, including them all. I think I'm up to 47 racetracks in North America. So, to get paid to go to different racetracks, obviously a dream come true to have a career in the motorsports era. But, through climbing the ranks of, becoming proficient in instructing safely above all else, because every year, the amount of laps that we do, we actually just this past year broke the amount of laps that we do in distance, in miles, is the same distance that it would take to get from the Earth to the moon. It was about 260,000 miles that we did over 53,000 driving experiences on an average 1.5 mile circuit, averaging 3 laps. So obviously that only happens if safety is the forefront of our program. There's a number of safety features we install, including lengthy brake zones, et cetera, and a ton of training. I mean, when I first got started, the program had come a long way, but it was pretty much like, 5 minutes, we'll check up on you a little bit. Now, if you were to sign up to Instruct with Extreme, which you absolutely should, if you have 5 years of racing or HPD experience, if you are very safety minded, and if you have excellent customer service skills, we would love to have you come out to one of our local tracks and start out as a new instructor and, get to drive and instruct in, Ferrari 488s, Lamborghini Huracans, McLaren 570S, Porsche GT3 RS, yes, please, GT500, Nissan GTR, etc. So it just, from going from that instructor to a lead instructor, which is where you become the one driving the pace cars, and then ultimately to teaching class and kind of running the event. Now, all of a sudden, in a step towards that greater goal, I was able to leave, a very secure, very comfortable job at a helicopter company, and now I'm doing extreme full time. So as the one of the safety managers and event chief instructors, we're staffing 25 instructors at 45 events in 35 different states. So I think we have something close to 200 active instructors. Whatever you've done, whether it's rally car racing, autocrossing, time attack, HPD, sprint races, endurance racing, there is nothing quite like extreme experience. So we put a lot of pride in our training program, so that you can first, above all else, keep the guests safe, but then create an environment where the average person who maybe never saw a Lamborghini, never mind got to sit in one, they can now take this car onto a racetrack and, go 150, 160 miles an hour. And I promise you, it is safe. As an instructor, someone who does it, it is safe. Is it a perfect system? No, but we take every step possible. And it really is a privilege because, I've had 12-year-old kids get in my car and I take them for a drive in a Ferrari, and I see lap by lap that I am changing their life. I'm comparing it to similar moments I had at my life, but 10 years later. They're going to have a 10-year head start on me. And then similarly, you have a guy who's 85 and he tells you that he's been waiting his whole life to drive a Ferrari, and you get the privilege to instruct that person. So, the cars are cool, but like we said, it's the community. So, I can tell you that as somebody who's in Pennsylvania, I have whatever friends I have local, they're wonderful. A lot of my very good friends are scattered all across the country, from extreme. So, the cars are wonderful, but it's the team environment, where whether I'm in New Orleans or California or Texas or the Pacific Northwest, I have time before and after to go explore these different cities. But then I'm also getting to drive, the new GT500 and compare that to the Hellcats and get paid. I mean, geez Louise, we spend so much money to drive crap cans around. Like you want to get paid to, instruct in supercars. If you have that experience, please email me, josh@xxspeed.com. Tyler's done it a couple times. Tyler is still awake.
If you're listening to this later and you can't remember that, or you don't want to back up that episode, get a hold of us. We'll put you in touch with Josh.
Yeah. But I mean, I'll wrap it up and let Tyler just speak to his experience, but I like to think that he's enjoyed it as well with his very broad resume of driving.
Yeah, no, it is a lot of fun. It's definitely a unique experience, and even if you do have experience in other aspects of racing or the performance car world or whatever, it'll totally shake you upside down. So if you're really looking for a new or fresh perspective, if you've maybe been stuck in HPD instruction, or you're just going to local club events and instructing other people that have never been before, and you want to apply some serious structure to what you think that you already know and be proven wrong.
And I've said this 1,000 times. You still get to be like, 99 out of 100 people that are going to sit next to you all weekend. They're going to go to work with the best story ever.
Yeah.
Oh,
and you're a part of that story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
go ahead.
It's just interesting in the sense that, for example, right now they are hopefully unloaded in New Hampshire Motor Speedway. They have a 4-day event. I think there's something like 1,535 people are going to drive this weekend. I think I did the math, including Worms. We're going to go about 7,000 miles this weekend. So 1,500 people, whether or not, they have their own Ferrari and they just don't want to get it dirty, or you'll be surprised to hear this is still on the better end of the spectrum. They live in New York City and never have turned before outside of a track light setting. Everybody in between, has the opportunity to, go through our classroom, learn the necessary fundamentals, and then have a safe and fun ride in a car. So you have 1,500 10-minute episodes of, a few laps with a stranger in a supercar. And, it never fails just to be, countless bucket list stories. I've been waiting my whole life. I mean, you hear and see and witness these people, realize a dream. And again, it's just a privilege to get to see that. So a lot of fun. And, I think obviously Mental's done it. And Jeff, have you done it? Chris and Chrissy, have you guys ever done it?
Chris has. I have not.
We're trying to get Chrissy out there.
If part of the problem is every time you're in our area, we're at a lemons race. I've missed like the last, I don't think I've instructed for the last 2 years, because every time Cal calls me, I'm like, I'm at a race.
Josh is the new Cal, so you guys should swap information.
There you go.
To that end, Jeff, if you've got your speaker queued up.
I do.
I hate to be this. Tyler, thank you for showing up. But we're going to talk to you in another episode. We'd like to get you your own episode, and then your dog, if he's available for your own episode.
Yes, the dog must come to the next episode.
Josh, seriously,
that one in my shop.
Yeah, ironically, we're going to try to film that in Josh's new shop. We'll see what
That's
happens.
a brilliant idea.
Good.
Josh, we've been buddies for years. You've been hammered. You've been kind of pinging me about doing this, and I didn't want to do it half-assed, and then I still just end up getting a hold of you a day before. Thank you for sharing everything. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, your experience, your social stuff. I genuinely look forward to the time when you and I are at the same track again. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. But
we're really glad we could have you both, and we will again probably come back to this topic in another date, because man, we barely scratched the surface. Is there any last social media? Did you actually give your Instagram handle or anything like that?
He did, and it's linked in our show notes.
Oh, got it.
And Tyler can be reached at Ty Speed, TY Speed. But yeah, thank you to Tyler for hosting this. We were planning on hanging out, and I called him yesterday and said, how about we hang out on a radio show? And it's been a lot of fun. Great to see you guys. Great to, I've been listening to your work more, and it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of it. And, to anybody who's thinking about composite materials or racing or any project you might have, go for it. Even if you mess up, at least you tried.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do we know what we're doing next week?
No.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yes, we do. It's New Jersey.
It's the New Jersey Prep Show. That's right, because we will be racing in 2 weeks at the NJMP Lemons. What is it? Is it There Goes the Neighborhood? I don't even know what they're calling it these days. But anyway, thank you for downloading us. We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Everyone Racers. We also want to thank our guests, and we want to hope that you can join all of us in the world of driving, racing, and building, because everyone can be a racer, even you, and everyone can try some composite materials, even you. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe. It's totally free. Then go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. Even if you hated us, give us 5 stars and tell us why. If you have any show questions or ideas, drop a comment on our Facebook page, or if you're watching on YouTube, you saw the mutt. Now there's the mutt. You can see the mutt. Now go down on the doodly doo and tell us how cute that dog is and how awesome that long roof is. Point to the long roof BMW back there. Yeah, some sexy beasts. But anyway, talk to us on the doodly doo down there in the comments. You can also drop a show idea or comment on our Facebook page, Everyone Racers, or email us at everyone.racers@gmail.com. You can still text us, 484-243-0455. Find us on Instagram or Twitter at Everyone Racers. Thanks again, and until next week, keep the shiny side up, unless it's all flat black carbon fibers, sons of bitches. Then just keep those wheels down.